Hey everybody, it's Tasha, and this is my recap of Arrow Season 5, Episode 5. So, this episode picks up right where the last one left off with Tobias Church torturing Renee. Once he succumbs and gives Church the information that he wants, he takes him out to the woods to kill him. While he's out there digging his own grave, he asks Church why he moved to Star City, and Church tells him that it's because he wants to move his entire drug trade there and use the waterways or the ports to transport his drugs. But before Church has a chance to kill him, now that he's made his confession, the Arrow shows up and saves him. In the big fight that ensues, Church escapes, and when Renee and Oliver are talking, he lets him know that he told Church his name, so now he knows his identity. Oliver gets Renee back to the bunker, but he doesn't have time to help him work through his issues of guilt for giving up his identity because he's busy as the mayor trying to get the city council to vote on an initiative that will provide low income housing. Of course, he runs into opposition by one of the council people. Initially, you think that it's for good intentions, and then you find out that the only reason he's opposing this vote is because he wants the property for himself so that his company can build on it. While Oliver's busy being mayor, Dig is tasked with working with Wild Dog to see if he can help him remember any details about Church's plans that he may have learned while he was in captivity. Eventually, Wild Dog does remember some coordinates of where Church is going to meet up with some of his associates, but they decide not to act on them immediately because they believe that Church is not going to make any major moves until he knows that the Arrow is out the way. So, knowing that Church won't go through with his plans until he knows for certain that Oliver is out the way, Diggle decides to call in his friend, Human Target, to impersonate Oliver so that when Church sends an assassin to shoot Oliver in the front of the City Hall building, and Quentin later announces that Oliver's been killed, Church is fully believing that his plan worked and Oliver is out the way so he can go ahead and meet with his associates and move his overall plan forward. Now, Church is feeling pretty confident, so he goes ahead with his plans and he decides to meet up with his associates. They meet at the airfield, and that's when Team Arrow shows up. While the team is taking out all of his associates and the rest of his crew, Oliver and Church face off. It's a short but sweet fight, and of course, the Arrow wins. So once he has Church shackled and he's being carted off to jail, Prometheus shows up. Now, Prometheus is angry because, of course, he warned Church that if he went after Oliver again, he would kill him. So he keeps his promise and he kills him with a throwing star to the neck. All in all, this was another really solid episode of Arrow. I would say that I really liked the way that even though the new team was there, they were relegated to the background so we could focus on Oliver, Felicity, and Diggle. Those are the characters that we really liked. Those are the ones that we cared about. So it was nice to be able to focus on them again. I really did enjoy the interactions with Diggle and Wild Dog. It was nice to see them interact because they both have the military background, and we got to see Renee really start to take responsibility for the fact that his actions are not always the wisest ones and they have really bad consequences. So he got a little bit of character development and we got a little bit more of his backstory, which was nice to see. Also, Diggle got a new helmet, which was also wonderful because thank you, Cisco, because that old one was really horrible. Now, another thing of note in this episode was that it focused pretty heavily on relationships. They really tried to show us that Olicity is over and that these two characters are moving on to other meaningful relationships. Now, I have no problem with romance in my TV shows, but what I don't like is obvious and contrived romances. And I feel like these two are being set up in such a way that it's very obvious that these relationships won't last. Now, Felicity is dating Billy Malone, and in this episode, Oliver finds out about it, and he says that he's fine with it. It's time for her to move on. He wants her to be happy, and he's going to try to do the same thing. Now, the reason I don't think that this is going to last is because there was no lead up to her dating Billy Malone. We don't have any backstory. We don't have any information on how they met. So it's kind of hard to care about this character or this relationship when there's just no information on it. We just start off and it's here. So I feel like Billy Malone is just a rebound relationship. Felicity was shot. She was paralyzed. She broke up with her fiance. She lost her job. And she killed thousands of people. And I feel like this is just a way for her to move on and pass time, but it's not going to be a lasting thing. And I feel like his character is pretty much either evil or he's going to die. Personally, I don't think that he's evil. I think it's going to be one of those situations where he's going to end up being sacrificed, especially since he was recently promoted to be on Oliver's anti-crime unit. Now, since they've already mentioned, the producers and the writers, that the second half of the season, they want to set up Felicity for some character development and a new arc, I think that it's more likely that Billy Malone will either sacrifice himself for the team, or more specifically, he's going to sacrifice himself for Felicity. And that's how her arc is going to begin. As for Oliver, they're setting him up in such a way that he's going to have a relationship with Susan Williams, the reporter. Now, this would be fine, him moving on, him going forward, him meeting someone new, if, one, we didn't know from the comic book that she ends up with somebody completely different, and two, they didn't already show the audience that she now has information showing that Oliver was not on the island the entire 5 years that he was away. Knowing that she has this information from the get-go, we could pretty much assume that she's going to choose to get closer to him. Even if there is an attraction, she's going to choose to get closer to him just for a story. Eventually, Oliver will most likely find out about that, and he's not going to trust her, and that's going to ruin the relationship. So the entire thing between both of these relationships just feels very obvious and very contrived. We already know what's going to happen before it happens. So that's a bit of a letdown, and I hope that they get through it really quickly. So what'd you guys think of the episode? Did you like the way that they tied up Tobias Church's storyline? Do you think they got rid of him too quickly? And as for Prometheus, do you think that he's going to have a multi-episode story arc, or do you think that he's the big bad of the entire season? Personally, I think that we're going to have quite a few one of Villain of the Week episodes up until we get to the mid-season finale, and even maybe when we get back, and then we'll find out a little bit more about Prometheus. And based on casting news, since they finally cast someone for Talia al Ghul, I kind of think that Prometheus is probably a henchman working for her, and that she may be the actual big bad of the season. I'm a little disappointed because I really wanted to find out that Tommy was the big bad was the character playing Prometheus, and that he was going to be the person that Oliver would have to face off against because he thought that maybe Malcolm was dead. But if they decide to just have him be a henchman, it'll still be an interesting fight between the two, and then he'll have to face off with Talia because he actually did murder her father. So that should be fun to watch. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode and this review. Comment below. Bye.